Good day, everyone. I am Ms. Christy Umacob-Ilan, the fourth reporter in Chapter 6, which is the tools. The outline is affinity diagram, KG analysis, Chick-Sheets, and scatter diagram. Affinity diagram, also called affinity charts or the Jiro-Kawakita or KG method. It is very useful tools that can help auditors organize ideas and large amounts of data. After a successful brainstorming, facilitator may have a large number of items that need to be processed, analyzed, and summarized. Affinity diagrams also useful to gather large amounts of data, organizing the data into groupings or themes, creating clusters based on the affinity that some items have to others, and when you need group consensus and when issues seem too large and complex to organize. Affinity diagrams require the following materials: sticky notes or cards and a large work surface to work on. The first step is to place each idea on a separate sticky note or card. These items can be copied off flip chart paper if that is where the original items were written on. If the facilitator believes that the brainstorming exercise will be followed by an affinity diagram, the ideas can be written directly on the sticky notes or cards. It is best to begin with a list of at least 20 items or issues. The next, place all the notes randomly on a large work surface. The item should be visible to everyone involved in this exercise. The following steps should be done silently. Taking turns, each team member looks for ideas that appear to be related somehow and places them side by side. The process is repeated until all notes are grouped, then someone else takes turn performing the same procedure, and this is repeated for each member. Don't rush through this step and make sure it is done in silence. This can be difficult for some people, but it is important so that other team members are not influenced by their colleagues. Then, after everyone has had a turn, team members can begin to talk and discuss the rationale for clustering several items together, for moving notes and creating a duplicate note if that was done. Affinity diagrams give groups an opportunity to exercise their creativity, break out of their habitual thinking, avoid jumping to conclusions, and avoid allowing preconceived notions drive their thinking. Report writing is another task that I found to be improved by this tool. It can be difficult to decide in what order the findings and observations should appear on the report when an audit results in multiple findings and observations. An affinity diagram can be helpful to arrange the items so the findings flow logically. There are two common challenges auditors face are 1. Making sure that they are not reporting on symptoms but rather on the root cause of problems, and 2. Reducing the length of the audit report. After preparing an affinity diagram, the reader may find, like I have on several occasions, that the number of findings is actually lower than it appeared originally because some of the findings were in fact symptoms of a higher level global issue. In these cases, the item that I originally thought were findings were actually symptoms of that higher level issue, and now the findings can be presented in its proper context, supported by the other information, and elevated for maximum attention as the global issue that it really is. By consolidating findings, the report is therefore shorter and more focused, and the case for corrective action is made more effectively. Internal auditors must remember that as the profession matures further and our role expands into one of change agent and facilitator, audit clients are looking for more than reports that state the organizations lack KPIs. Consider an organization lacking performance indicators. An affinity diagram is used during a facilitated meeting with management to identify the appropriate metrics, determine what business units those metrics belong, and which individuals will own those metrics rather than generating a long list of assorted items, as a brainstorming session with the affinity diagram can help to arrange those items for inclusion in the audit report, management operating reports, and monitoring activities. The summary of affinity diagrams works best when the team is small and you want to highlight similarities in ideas to build consensus and organize ideas or items into categories or themes. Next is Chick-Sheets. Cheat sheets are a common tool widely used by internal auditors but seldom called by that name. It is a structured form or document used to collect and analyze data. This is often done real-time where the data are generated or collected. The information collected can be either qualitative or quantitative, and the form is sometimes called a tally sheet because the data are often used to track and count the number of instances of various phenomena associated with the review being performed. Cheat sheets provide a tool to consistently capture information about transactions examined. It can be used when the data are observed and collected repeatedly and the intent is to document the frequency or pattern of problems, defects, defect causes, or events. Most auditors focus on documenting issues. Their construction and use usually only shows the problems where those are present, but not the root cause for the concentration of sources of the problem. For example, if a process requires a review of transactions, issues associated with those items could include errors in the amount, the date when the transaction was recorded, transactions that were not reviewed and approved as required, and the lack of supporting documentation. On the right side, we can see the following steps on how cheat sheet could be constructed. First is identify the document operational definitions. Second, decide what event or problem will be observed. Third, decide when the data will be collected. Fourth, design the form so that the data can be recorded simply and clearly by making check marks. Fifth, label rows and columns. Six, select the transactions, items, or events. 7, record on the cheat sheet every time the event or problem occurs. Next is, we can see the figure 6.5 and 6.6 in the right side. Figure 6.5 is an example of a cheat sheet that can be used to collect data or on errors made while paying invoices. Figure 6.5 is an example of a cheat sheet that can be used to collect data on errors made while paying invoices, and Figure 6.6 shows an enhanced cheat sheet. With the second approach shown, the source of the problem becomes clearer as it becomes evident that operator A accounts for a disproportionate amount of the errors. This approach provides insights into the source of the errors and facilitates the next step in the process. Investigating the cause of the problem, it is clear that with minimal extra work and by simply modifying the layout of the tool used to capture the information, the auditor is now aware of a great deal of useful information. Auditors should examine the design of their work templates to make sure that they are not missing the opportunity to hone in on the source of the issues that are identifying during the course of their audits. It only requires a minimal amount of additional work, but the results are very valuable. Next topic is the scatter diagram. A scatter diagram is a visual tool for analyzing pairs of numerical data and showing the relationship between two variables. It is sometimes called a scatter plot or an XY graph with one variable on each axis. One variable is plotted on the horizontal axis and the other hand is plotted on the vertical axis. And if the variables are correlated, the points will fall along a line or a curve. Quite often, variables like error rates, accident rates, delays, or merchandise returns are examined as individual metrics to determine if the item is increasing or decreasing. Sometimes, the analysis is done to determine if the item is oscillating or fluctuating in erratic ways, which may indicate that the underlying activities are unpredictable. Further, the analysis may be done to determine if a directional change or a sudden spike occurred when that happened. All of these procedures are useful and part of what auditors may want to check for. When analyzing the plotted data, the objective is to determine if a correlation exists between two values. The correlation exists if a change in one value causes a change in another value. The relationship has two general key elements, direction and intensity. Direction, if the two variables increase in tandem, there is a positive correlation between the two. This means that as one variable increases, the other variable increases as well. On the other hand, if one variable increases while the other decreases, there is a negative or inverse relationship between them. Next is the intensity. This has to do with how strong the relationship is or the correlation coefficient. The stronger the relationship, the higher the correlation between the two. The correlation coefficient ranges from +1, which is highly positive correlation, to -1, which is highly negative correlation. When the data are plotted, the more the data points resemble a straight line, the stronger the relationship. If a line is not clear, statistics determine whether there is a reasonable certainty that a relationship exists. If the statistics say that no relationship exists, the pattern could have occurred by random chance. In general, auditors should think creatively how to use scatter diagrams to discover root causes and support their findings with information about the relationship between multiple variables. This can enable them to provide management with useful forward-looking assistance when making decisions. And that's all. Thank you.